So without further ado, we're going to bring in our candidate guest for the evening. She is a former slate mate of Jen's with Brand New Congress. She is running again in New York's 3rd Congressional District against Tom Southey. And she's going to have an excellent opportunity to defeat him, as she had a fantastic showing the first time. Let's make sure we get her over the finish line this time. Please welcome Melanie Dorigo to their Generational Change.
Hi.
Hi. It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Jen. It's so great to be on the show with you tonight.
It's great to see you. I love your hair. Looks great.
Oh, thank you. I call this.
And I love your and I love your background. So how about that?
Oh,
no, but
thank you.
She changed her hair.
This is au naturel. This is called not getting your hair done during a global pandemic. It's very chic, you know. So.
Oh, because I really like it. I like your color. I think it looks great.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your district, where it encompasses, and like what are like the key issues, like what's going on up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm running in New York's 3rd district. It's a little bit of a unique district in that it actually spans 3 counties. So it's part of New York City in northeastern Queens, northern Nassau County and mid-Nassau, and northwestern Suffolk County. And you know, it's certainly a mix. My opponent likes to describe it as a purple district, but it's been solidly blue for a very, very long time. And, you know, there are folks here that really caught on to progressive change. You know, we ran a straight grassroots campaign last time around. We knocked a lot of doors pre-pandemic. We reached voters in a way that, you know, they had never experienced before. We knocked on election districts that had never, ever had anyone come visit them before. And I think, you know, there's something really special when you are knocking at the door, you're in someone's living room and you're having a conversation about issues that are important to them and how they matter and how they ladder up to federal issues. So, you know, there's in many ways, the district cares about big national issues. I think healthcare, housing, affordability, inequality. Certainly, the district was really impacted by you know, a lot of the racial justice movements of, you know, the past year. Environment is a big one here. We are a coastal community. You know, we draw our water from an aquifer system that's polluted. You know, not just a quick little plug here that the pollution is mainly caused by one of my opponent's top donors, right? So we do a lot.
I was going to say, you know, what has the incumbent been doing about all of these things? Let me guess, he's out spearheading the Green New Deal. He's out fighting for climate change, right?
So here's the thing, you know, he has signed on actually to the Green New Deal resolution, but then he later called it a fantasy land and said that it was just to shock people. I think that he is aware that the climate change is happening. He's aware that we need some action, but there really hasn't been a lot of forward thinking. There hasn't been a lot of rallying the troops or using his power that he does have. You know, he does sit on one of the most powerful committees in Congress, and we don't see him leveraging that power to help our district or help the rest of America. What we do see,
why is that?
Because he's got a lot of corporate donors that tell him how to vote. You see, Jen, and how to maneuver. You know, you may have heard there is a small minority of Congress saying no SALT, no deal. Have you heard about this? Yeah.
No.
So well, there's a state and local tax here in New York, and it does hurt a lot of families. You know, where we live in our district, you know, a middle class family would be considered wealthy in other parts of the state, but here they're scrapping by, living paycheck to paycheck because of the high cost of living in this area. And so, essentially, with Trump's tax cuts, he put a cap on the state and local tax deduction, and it hurt, you know, quite a few families, but what Tom, my opponent, is advocating for is a full repeal so you can write off whatever you want. And no doubt it would help people. I think we just need to raise the cap to keep that focus on really giving the middle class some relief. It'll also help wealthy people because you're allowed to deduct it. But what we found was that 60% of the benefits go to the top 1%. And so he's threatening to hold up the infrastructure package if there isn't a full repeal in the infrastructure bill. So that's where he has chosen to put his stake in the ground, unfortunately.
Speaking with Melanie DeRigo, she is running for the U.S. Congress in New York's 3rd District. You said it covers 3 different counties, your district. That obviously speaks to the beautiful problem of gerrymandering. But I am curious as to how, some of the different organizations, one organization in particular who we are very big fans of, and were actually a very big help to Jen at one point, are the Long Island Progressives, particularly led by Robert Buonaspina. So I'm curious if they're obviously lending a hand, and what's it been like, courting other organizations that are, we'll just say, part of the Democratic Party, because obviously a lot that goes into unseating an incumbent has to do with not just the candidate, but also the infrastructure that is in place, particularly with county party chapters and whatnot.
Yeah.
Right. So, a lot of what we tried to do during the last cycle is build, and not only build infrastructure, but also try to build a coalition of a lot of the existing groups. After Trump was elected, I still shudder to even say that, but after he was elected, we had about 100 different grassroots groups spring up all over Long Island. So there is energy, there is hunger, there is desire for change. And most of them went very progressive. The Long Island activists, yes, Robert, I know Robert, he's a good friend of mine. They did endorse me last cycle. They haven't done their endorsements this time around. I hope to have their support. I do a lot of
those
organizing.
Guys. They were great. They were one of the first groups, when he was one of the first people that reached out and started to help me get name recognition. And I mean anywhere, even including South Florida. So yeah, we love those guys.
They're fantastic. We're actually really lucky this particular cycle. I've actually already received 7 endorsements. So we launched about 6 weeks ago. So we have, we're doing pretty good there.
Yeah.
So of this cycle, I'm the first candidate to be endorsed by Brand New Congress, the National Organization for Women, Moms in Office, Her Bold Move, and then 2 powerhouse New York groups, Empire State, Indivisible, and Progressive Women of New York. And I just found out last week that I was early endorsed by Matriarch as well. So we're doing all right so far. We hope to keep building. Part of, my candidacy has always been about the progressive change, right? So it's never about one candidate, but it's about laying the groundwork to pull up others with you and hope that others can run for office. I do want to give, if I can, if it's all right, Jen, I'd love to give a quick shout out to this amazing, brilliant young woman that I met in the last cycle. Her name is Jesslyn Carr. I was impressed with her from the start, and she actually just ran a killer city council race. Unfortunately, she came in a very close second. She didn't make it this time, but I think she's the future of Queens, and I feel so grateful to have maybe played a small part in that and helping her. So, we're hoping to see her run again and others like her as well.
No, that's what we're all about. We're all about doing local, city, county, because this is where we have a better chance to actually infiltrate and get what we want done. And that's where most of the stuff happens anyway, quite honestly, and the real policies that affect us on a daily basis. And I think local is where it's at. I think that's very important. And that's also where we're going to see the leaders coming up that we need.
Melanie, if you can talk about, we emphasize a lot that, AOC obviously takes a lot of scrutiny, some warranted, some not. But I don't think people really understand the impact that her win over Joe Crowley has had on the city of New York. Obviously, as you just alluded to, Ms. Carr, who ran, and I believe she was endorsed by the Sunrise Movement of New York, most of those candidates either won or lost by a hair. And I do think a lot of what she brought to the table in terms of that change, I think has really inspired a lot more people to take up action in New York City. And you're starting to see the results of that now. So if you could talk about that, certainly would love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think certainly in New York, but I also would say probably all over the country. I think she made everyone realize that you could run for office if you wanted to change things, that you didn't have to be linked to immense wealth and power. You didn't have to have all of these contacts or be, part of the political elite class, that you could just be an organizer or a person who cared deeply about your community and wanted better for your community. And I think, while we know that it's extremely difficult to run one time and win. I think women, Jen, you could back. I think women, they say you have to run 2.9 times before they win, right? 2.9.
Yeah.
right? And a lot of it we know is unfortunately name recognition, and it's support, it's infrastructure, it's money, it's all of these things. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez showed us that with hard work and grit and wearing out the soles of your shoes, you could win and you could get really close. And all of a sudden, I think that just shifted the mindset, and it made probably hundreds of candidates just step up across the country to say, well, if she could do it, you know what? I can be brave enough to do this for my community as well. So I think she changed the game in a very profound way. And I think we're going to see that long lasting for many years to come. And I'm just, I feel fortunate. We're very close, our district wise. She's just kind of a neighbor in Queens there, and she's just doing phenomenal work for her community.
Yeah.
A mutual friend of both of you is Lindsay Boylan, was also part of BNC. She pretty much made a personal decision which affected her political career by speaking the truth about Governor Cuomo. If you can talk about how difficult it is.
You're frozen again.
He's frozen again?
Wait, now you're not. Now you're not. But I did see a question in the chat about this, about whether or not Melanie supports Cuomo. I can't fathom that she really would, but if you would answer that.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that relates to the question. I highly doubt you support Andrew Cuomo. But my point is, if you could talk about how difficult it is to be a woman running for office, and then to be even more honest, the difficulties of being an attractive woman running for office, and the type of.
Isn't that nice? That's a compliment, Melanie.
Thanks.
To deal with the type of harassment that you inevitably have to deal with as a candidate.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll answer the quick question in the chat. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons not to support Governor Cuomo, the least of which is not, his many growing allegations of sexual harassment against him. There are many reasons. I look forward to see either, a progressive primary challenger or maybe even an open primary here in New York. I think New York politics is going to be very interesting this coming cycle. Lindsay is a friend of mine, and it was, I'm a survivor of sexual assault, so I know how hard it is in private to come out and come forward with your story. But I know it's got to be a million times worse to do it publicly, especially when you have so many folks coming at you. We know that a lot of folks that worked for Cuomo were coming at her and trying to shred her and discredit her, leaking, prior personnel files, really gross stuff. And I just think she's so brave, and I really am just continually impressed with the work that she does, and how true to herself she is. And she knew the risks, right? We all know the risks as women, unfortunately, when we come out and tell our truth. We know we're putting a target on our back, but she did so anyway, right? And she did it because she couldn't fathom this man doing this to others, right? And I think it was just incredibly brave, and I admire her greatly. And then the second part of your question, how hard is a woman running for office? I think
she's never been a man running for office, Peter, so she really has no frame of reference.
I don't. I will say, though, I think it's hard if you're a progressive running for office, because they come for you, right? It's certainly hard. I mean, look, you get a fair share of the honeys and the sweeties I got from really some egregious comments from women, from women of a certain generation would say things to me like, well, why don't you fill potholes first? As if, there is some sort of
you gotta wait your turn. It's not your time.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of
worse from women. Young. You're right. It is. It's worse from women. I remember that too, Peter. Remember the two ladies? Don't you remember the ladies at the table in Orlando at the convention?
Yeah, there was.
It's always been worse from women. They are the worst critics of us doing this.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
First of all, I've told this to Jen, and this is just a man's perspective, but women tend to be very jealous of other women, especially women that they perceive to be more attractive or appealing than they are. And I think that this is a deep-seated issue that never really gets talked about. I've said it I've said it a million times. I'll say it one more time. I could die 100 times. I would never come back as a woman. It is so much easier to be a man in this world.
Oh,
And
yeah.
for anybody who thinks that that is not the case, try raising a child. Let's just start there.
Try birthing a
Well, I
child.
mean, there's a lot of things, but the truth is that women know, and I've said it a ton of times, I do not know an adult woman that has not been violated in her life. Now, that's a spectrum. It ranges from, inappropriate comments to, the Bill Cosby scenario and everything in between. But like, we've all been violated. So when somebody comes forward and says that, chances are it's true. Chances are it's true. It's like, yeah, you will have false allegations. There's going to be spiteful people that do nasty things. You're going to have that. But I err on the side of believing because I don't know a woman that hasn't been violated. So that makes that be very plausible to me,
Absolutely. I mean, it's the percentage of false accusations are very, very small. You're right.
Yeah.
They do happen, but they are very, very small. What we do know is let's just talk about rape. So let's talk at one end of the spectrum. Only a third of rapes, and maybe even less, are actually reported. And very out of that, I think it's something like a third of that are convicted, and even less, actually end up doing any like prison time or anything like that. But it's a pervasive issue that happens to women, nonstop. It's really out of control. Yeah. And I think with the case of Lindsay, here's a young woman who has so much going for her, who really did not need, there was absolutely no reason that, she even needed to share her truth other than she wanted to help other women. Right. So I know she took a lot of flack for that, and she shouldn't have. I think what I'm hopeful of is that, women like us, Jen, we are not like that. We stand our ground. We believe women. We help other women. And I think that there is a little bit of a turning of the tides, and that we want to support women. We need you. Oh, how can we help you? Come on in. What can we do? And I think that's the way it should be, right?
I think that is generational. I do. And it's true. And this is sort of cross-racial, I've noticed as well. There's a generational divide between this idea of sitting permanently in your position with the status quo and this idea of change. And that makes perfect sense. That's, what we're trying to do. But I want you to spend a little bit of time talking about like the key issues that are most important to you, and really why you're in this. Like what this is really about for you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a Medicare for All candidate. I spent my career working in the preventive health space, and really learned the ins and outs of the system. And I just think I come at it from a moral perspective, but it's also a fiscal perspective, because we know that Medicare for All is both moral and fiscal in terms of, what's best for our country. So that is something that's really important to me, particularly coming out of before so as well. But I think we have a real opportunity as we come out of the pandemic. New York got hit very hard. We got hit first. And a lot of folks started to change their mind when all of a sudden their employment and their health insurance was threatened. So I think we have a chance for some real movement here. We have to take it. We're doing a lot of statewide organizing as well to try to attack it at several fronts. I'm also a Green New Deal candidate. As I said, we live in, my district hugs a coastline. We live, we're surrounded by water. And, I'm sure you saw the news the other day that power lines were melting in Portland. We're in for a pretty hot summer here as well. And it's only going to get worse for the Northeast region. So these are things that I'm very, very focused on. I have not made a secret about being against corporate money in politics. I'm a completely grassroots funded candidate. I think that corporate money in progress stunts any progress, any major developments that we need in this country. And we need to stop. We need to get corporate money out of politics. And if that means that we keep running, people like you, Jen, people like me, keep running for office so that we can get elected and show people that there is another way, that we can actually vote with the people in mind, we'll all be better for it. I'm also a women's rights advocate, and I am for the last, several cycles here. I've been really advocating hard to repeal the Hyde Amendment. It looks like we're closer. We'll see what happens this time. But I feel really strongly about ensuring that all people are treated equally and equitably. Obviously, also fighting for racial justice and criminal justice reform as well.
Speaking with Melanie DeRigo, who is candidate for New York's 3rd Congressional District, I think it's also very important to piggyback on what you just said in terms of the statewide initiative. The New York Health Act, in my humble opinion, is the closest we are right now to having a universal healthcare system at some level in the United States. We are actually going to have State Senator Gustavo come on our podcast in a couple of weeks. I think this is a very essential conversation that needs to be had, and that's more about what our podcast is about. I
really think we should ask him to come to our healthcare summit. I do.
Well, okay. I mean, I will.
I really think we should. I really think.
So this is a shout to John right now. John, we really need to have Mr. Gustavo, on the. I think having him. We need to just ask
if he can relocate him or reschedule him rather.
We'll try to get him on with Marianne Williamson. I think.
Because I really think that really just it ties it all together.
It does. And I think that this is a very important issue. I think that India Walton winning the mayoral race, knock on wood, I mean, we all know they're going to try something to knock her off her perch in November, but, that's corporate corrupt politics at its worst. But assuming that everything holds serve, she will be the mayor of the 2nd largest city in all of New York State. And so I think that she just happens to be another piece on the chessboard that will help us get to a universal healthcare system, even if it's in the state of New York, because I truly believe that once you knock down a domino the size of New York, it's going to go throughout the whole country.
It's true.
And that's
true.
And that's essentially and that's what happened in Canada. Saskatchewan was able to pass it, and then eventually it hit every province. And I do think in the United States, because of how shiftless and corrupt Capitol Hill is as of now, I do think at the state level that's where it's going to happen. So as a federal candidate, if you can talk about how you see your role in helping advance the message of the New York Health Act, that would be great.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I've definitely been involved on both fronts, right? Trying to organize on the state level as well as the federal level. Like I said, we did a lot of groundwork in my campaign last time, just simply by knocking on doors and having meet and greets. And what we did, in the last term, I think that the term Medicare for All was still considered radical by some. They cannibalized the talking point. So I would go in and I would talk to them strictly about the policy. I wouldn't say the word Medicare for All until the very end. And people would, what do you mean that's Medicare for All, right? And I think we got a lot of folks really understanding what the policy was and what it could offer and what it could mean. So I feel, I think we'll be able to talk about it like that again this time around. But we also have a New York Health Act coalition, and there's a lot of work being done there as well. There's talk about some big walks coming up at the end of July, but we're going to be in Albany. We're going to be doing more lobbying visits. We have been doing lobbying visits. We do a lot of teach-ins. We'll probably do some more because they tend to work very good in our region. And, really it's to me, I mean, I want Medicare for all on a federal level because I think it's really important. We're the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have a universal healthcare system. But I'm happy to fight for the New York Health. I'm happy to fight for it on both, from both fronts. If we can get it here and then pop it like dominoes, great. But I do think it's important to talk about it both ways. But to me, like one hand feeds the other. If we get someone to support Medicare for all, then we funnel them to the New York Health Act. If we get folks to support them, then we funnel it to Medicare for all. Because what we're finding is that, the activists and organizers are all on board. Right. It's the corporate Democrats that are saying, no, this is a bad idea. But most people, they don't really have a sense of what it is. They just want to know that they have healthcare when they need it. And I think if they knew that this is a healthcare system that would be less expensive, that would lower their property taxes, which in New York, by the way, are sky high. Property taxes are killing people here. I think that there would start to be a shift. It's also better for small businesses, and I think when we can reach people on that sort of one-to-one level, which is the work that we're hoping to do as a campaign. We're just like one campaign, not even as the New York Health Act. campaign, I think will move the needle in really profound and amazing ways.
Yeah.
So Roger Meadows, friend of the show. Roger, thank you very much for the contribution. President Biden can issue executive orders on Medicare for all, student debt forgiveness, for negotiation on lower drug prices, recall all military grade equipment, and of course, police reform. Are you willing to use your leverage to threaten to crash through the debt ceiling okay, so I guess essentially what he's saying is, will you use your leverage when it comes to your vote to try to push forward these agendas that right now it seems that the squad is not taking the initiative on, but maybe it's a question of numbers. I think it's just a question of political will. And I think having political will is it may be more than half the battle, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I know that whole there's the big debate of force the vote or not. I think it depends on the issue, and I think you don't want to waste your leverage either. I was on a podcast a couple weeks ago. We were having this conversation, and while I think bringing something like Medicare for all to a floor vote in that particular instance with using leverage. It may have helped in certain districts, but I am pretty confident that there would be many districts where you would see representatives vote for it, knowing it wasn't going to pass, and then they would have cover, and they would say, well, I support it. Right? Yeah. I think that's the case. We see that happening a lot in my district and surrounding districts. So I'm not so sure that, that would be, it's the right means to the end. So I think it really depends. If it's a situation where we know we're going to win, then we have to do everything we can. And then if we're not going to get what we need, we just need to look at all the chess pieces on the board.
I think that's a very good point. And I do think that is the one fair argument and legitimate argument that could be made against force the vote, even though we did support it. I don't think it was handled properly. We both agree with that. We probably all agree with that. At the end of the day, most of these representatives are very nefarious. Your representative would be a great example of that. Our representative would be a great example of that. They are not there to serve the collective. They are there to serve themselves. And that is a very big part of the problem. And a lot of that obviously stems back to corporate special interest money. So with that said, it's obviously been a pleasure having you on the show. I want you to make your pitch, if you will.
Well, let's get her link up.
Yes. Well, let's get the website up, but we also would love for you to make your pitch as to why you would be the better representative of New York's 3rd congressional district.
It's so blatantly obvious already.
Yeah, it is, but some people really need to
by
hear.
all means.
Yes. Well, firstly, I would just like to say thank you so much for having me. I know we were trying to plan this for a very long time, so it's an absolute pleasure to join you both this evening. So thank you. To your viewers, thank you so much for listening a little bit about our district here in New York 3. It is very clear to me that in my particular race, there is one person that represents the corporate lobbyist industry. That is the current congressman. And there is another candidate who is fighting for people and for equity for all people, and that is me. So if you believe that people should have health care, if you believe that we should save the planet and at the same time create a national jobs program and fight inequality, if you believe in criminal justice reform and real racial justice, then I'm the candidate to support. I hope you will support me. We are a grassroots funded campaign. We are doing this for all the right reasons. I'm a mom of 3, and I look at my little baby's faces every day, and I know that I need to fight with everything I have for them. I'm not tied to wealth. I don't have the political connections. Everything that we built has been through hard work and grit and knocking in rain and snow and sleet and hot summer days. And that's okay. I'm willing to do it all day, every day, if it means we can have the change that we need in this country. So I hope that you are with us, because we're going to need you. We need every bit. If you can chip in $5, if you can chip in $25, whatever you can chip in will help us continue to get our message out there and build out the infrastructure we need and hire the staff that we need. I think we've got a really good shot this year. We came pretty close last year without knocking doors. So this year, with a team in place and being able to knock doors, and with a year away from the primary, I think we're going to shake it up here in New York 3.
I think you are too. Guys, support Melanie. And I know that we have lots of candidates on, but let me tell you, if you guys allocate X amount of dollars a month to supporting certain candidates and split it up and be a monthly donor to different ones, because quite honestly, it's the support of so many people that makes it happen, more so than just an exact amount. And I think Spread it out, guys. Be monthly donors to a lot of different candidates because we need to spread the love out.
And I'm not going to say we love every candidate that we bring on that is not taking corporate special interest money, but I will say this. This is a winnable race.
Yes.
And that is a very important thing to consider. Melanie, can you please let the audience know how much, what percentage of the vote you got in the first campaign?
Yeah. So, I don't want to, am I talking over?
Yeah, no, go ahead. He froze again. And we're going to have to deal with it, technical issues, but no, go ahead.
That's okay. So we got a little under 30% of the vote, but here's what's really interesting. In New York, the presidential primary and the congressional primary were supposed to be on separate days. At the last minute, they combined them. And then they also did something different with absentee ballots where it allowed more voters to vote, which is all, you know, of course, a wonderful thing. But as Jen can tell you and Peter can tell you, when you're running a campaign, you look at what previous turnout was like. And then you make some estimations on how many voters you need to contact. Now, as much as we would love to contact every single voter 10 times in the district, that would cost millions and millions of dollars. So because we're a grassroots funded campaign and we have a limited amount we have to be as strategic as possible to contact our most likely voters and get them to the polls. Now, interestingly, in the last primary, only 20,000 people came out to vote. In last year's primary, which was different and just a complete anomaly because they combined the presidential and voter turnout was different, we had almost 15,000 voters. So if we only energize our base, like, we should win this primary. But we're not looking to just energize this base because we have to look for the general. So we're looking to quadruple our base for the primary so we can get as many voters there and really show our strength and then sail on into the general. We'll be working, straight through until November. But that's what we need to do. But imagine that, 20,000 votes, 20,000 votes. My opponent is in Congress taking all the corporate money he wants because he won his primary with 7,000 votes. This is a very winnable seat.
Yeah,
I definitely agree. Thank you so much for coming on. I am sure we will have you on again. And obviously, all the best and keep building that base. You're doing a fantastic job, Mel.
Thank you. And thank you to you guys. Thanks so much for the work that you do.
Absolutely.
Pleasure. Have a great evening.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.